All right, 3-1 notes. Let's do a little review from chapter 2. So if you'll turn to your 3-1 notes, this is not written in your note sheets, but just go ahead and put it on the blank page to the left of it or at the top, wherever you can fit it. Okay, and let's just review those 5 types of angles that we've talked about so far in our last couple of chapters, and then relate it to the shortcuts that we're trying to give you for today when the pictures become a little more complicated. All right, so first here, remember, very important information. These 2 lines are parallel, and by these 2, I'm talking about the one I'm labeling A and B right now. You either have to be, remember, you never, ever, ever trust a picture in geometry, okay? You can't just tell me those lines are never going to intersect. Sometimes they even draw them in the book so that they look like they're going to intersect, but they won't, okay? So you have to trust the information that's told to you. So you either have to be told A is parallel to B, like we talked about in last chapter, okay? There's that symbol parallel. Or somebody has to give you a symbol. And that is what I've done in this picture. Both A and B have arrows on them. Okay, so those arrows right there are what indicate to you that those lines are parallel. Okay, all right, so we've got parallel lines cut by a transversal. And then let's just go through our 5 different types. Okay, so first one that we did was AE, alternate exterior angles. Okay, alternate exterior, no real shortcut. You're just going to have to know these. So I'll give you one example. This one and this one that I just marked in purple are alternate exterior, and because the lines are parallel, they are congruent to each other, which means equal. Okay. All right, next one, let's do alternate interior angles. Okay. And alternate interior angles are also congruent to each other if the lines are parallel, like in this picture. Okay, but here's a shortcut. So this and this, for example, I'll just use 2 dots. Those are alternate interior angles and they're equal. I'll just use the dot as my symbol because this is going to get more complicated quickly. Okay, now what I notice is a letter, and that letter is a Z, if I outline this. Important to notice that I'm putting the arrow here and the arrow here, okay, because those 2 lines are parallel. So if those 2 that have the arrows, because that's what that means, are parallel, and you see a letter Z, so I'll come over here and do it. So if you don't have a whole picture drawn with a transversal and everything, but all you see is a letter Z, you're supposed to know that these angles inside are alternate interior angles, and therefore they are congruent. Okay, maybe I'll use the same symbol I did over there. There we go. Okay. All right, next shortcut. So understand that Z. That Z could be sideways, it could be backwards, it could be anything. Okay, so in other words, if I just put some dots, here's a blue dot, that place and that place, you should also be able to enclose in a backward Z. Okay, that Z would look like this. I just don't want to keep messing up the picture because we're going to fill in a lot, and there would be those 2 dots. Okay, all right, I'll get rid of those so that we are not confusing you for the next stuff. There we go. For the next one, let's do corresponding angles, which we abbreviated with a capital C. Corresponding angles, once again, are congruent if the lines are parallel, which they are. Okay. All right, so corresponding, let's come up with 2 corresponding angles. Let's go with this one, use a different symbol, and this one. Those 2 that I just put in blue are corresponding angles, and the letter shortcut that I see that goes with it is this. We call this one a F. Okay, but notice again where I put the arrows while I was drawing that. Okay, so if these 2 parts of the F are parallel to each other, the two that have the arrows, then you should know that this angle and this angle are corresponding and therefore congruent. But again, you got to look for those parallel lines. Okay. And then we have seen by doing some manipulation that supplementary angles, supplementary angles are created if we're able to pick up something and set it next to it, which we did a lot in the last chapter. And we've seen a lot that it happens with, let's say this one. I'll just use a double line, so I'm using a different symbol. And this one, which I will maybe put a circle with it, because I'm not saying they're equal. I mean, obviously one of them looks acute and one of them looks obtuse, so they're not equal to each other, but I'm just trying to use a different symbol. And both of those we have seen are supplementary, So we used capital S, remember, for that. And we're going to say that those are supplementary. And so that's when you have either straight angles, right? So either they're sitting next to each other, I'll just use the angle symbol already, or you pick them up so that they are, or the shortcut I see over here, the letter, is kind of, if I go like this, kind of a funky C, but notice where I'm putting the arrows this time again. There are my arrows. And therefore, if I come over here and draw for you some sort of looking C, and those two parts are the parallel parts, then I'm supposed to know that this angle with that symbol that I gave you, and this angle with the circle that I gave you, they're not equal to each other, but they are supplementary. They add to 180. And then of course the last one, which really doesn't have anything to do specifically with this picture, which is why I left it separate, are vertical angles, which we abbreviated V. And remember, vertical angles are always congruent. Always congruent. And those are created anytime you see a, well, if we want a letter, maybe you think of this as two V's attached to one another, like we talked about. Maybe you want to think of it as an X. I'll leave that up to you. So are you going to think of that as an X, or are you going to think of it as like this V on top of this upside down V that you see me drawing? That's up to you, how you want to think about that. But if I just get rid of that, draw it one more time so that it's not so confusing. If you want to think of it as X or V, that's up to you. But remember, we're talking about anytime two lines intersect, then these two angles across from each other are vertical and therefore congruent, and these two angles across from each other are vertical and therefore congruent. All right, there's a rundown of all the review from last chapter and how it's going to help you with a shortcut for this chapter. Okay, so now if we go ahead and turn to our actual notes, why don't we not jump right into maybe some of the hardest ones, but which ones to you look maybe the simplest? Where do you think you could find a Z, a C, an F? And you've got problems 1 through 9. So I'm thinking maybe the most straightforward one that you might see is 7. So here's what I'm hoping that you are seeing in 7. Let's go to that one first. And you're welcome to use colored pencils, pens, whatever's going to help you with this stuff. I've got to focus a lot on those arrows. So what I see when I see this, I see the letter C. It's a weird looking C, but does it have the appropriate parts parallel? Yes, there are my arrows. And therefore, I'm supposed to know that the angles inside of a C are supplementary. Okay, so if I take 180 minus 155, right, I would know that x equals 25 degrees. And this is exactly how you show work, okay? By outlining it, putting your angles in the picture, and anytime you solve for something, just make sure that you put it in the picture. That's going to be helpful here, okay? And then if you just go write your answer off to the side and box it, I'll know what you're doing for homework. All right, maybe the next easiest one for you to recognize would be 3. Do you see any letters? Z's, C's, F's, X's. Don't forget, you also know straight angles. Okay, all of those things. All right, so here in 3, 1, it doesn't matter which order you try to do them in, but if you get stuck, it might kind of deem what kind of order you're going in. All right, so maybe here's the first thing I see. Without picking up my pen, there's a half circle. That's supposed to mean everything in that half circle makes up a straight angle and therefore equals 180. All right, so if I do 180 minus 107, I will get that x equals 73 degrees. Okay, so off to the side, go ahead and finish our answer for x. Put it in the picture because it might be helpful. And then the next thing I'm seeing, I notice a laying down sideways F. There's the F with the appropriate parts that are supposed to be parallel. And inside of an F, I'm supposed to know that these two parts are equal. So since x was already labeled 73, we know 73 degrees would go here. And therefore, y would equal 73 degrees. For those of you wondering, was there a different way to do y? Of course there was. Okay, this is also a C. So it's got to be whatever you see, guys. And no pun intended, you'll see something different every single time. Okay, so again, the numbers inside of a C are supposed to be supplementary. And indeed, 107 plus 73 do equal 180. Okay, so whichever one you are seeing is going to be helpful to you. Okay. All right. Next, maybe we'll go back to 1. Okay, because this looks more like some of the pictures that you saw in the last chapter, right? You just got 2 sets of parallel lines. And just so you know, sometimes they will do this where they'll say, okay, here's single arrow. So those 2 are the ones that are parallel to each other. And here's a double arrow. So those are the 2 that are parallel to each other. Sometimes they do that, sometimes they don't. Okay, but trust that they are parallel just to, it's one other one. Okay. All right, anything that you can find. So for instance, you don't necessarily have to find x before you find y, before you find so on and so forth. Okay, you can find any of them in any order that you want. All right, so forcing you to try to use letters though. Okay, I see a weird looking Z right there. Okay, with the appropriate parts being parallel. That's supposed to tell me that these 2 angles are equal to one another. So if I pick up the 41 degrees and I put it there appropriately, okay, then I will be able to find a relationship between that and x. And since they are sitting right next to each other, we should know that x equals its supplement. Okay. Likewise, you know that these 2 angles are this one and this one are vertical. So this one's also 41 degrees. I bet you could go through the entire picture and mark a lot of the 41 degrees and it would help you solve for W, Y, and Z. Okay, but we're trying to get you used to using those letters. So here we go. There were our 2 41 degrees. All right, and then next to it, X, if you do 180 minus 41, you'll have 139 degrees. All right, let's go start gathering our answers. X is 139 degrees. And then if we look at maybe another backward Z, let's go with red. Here's a backward Z with appropriate parts being parallel. And so that's supposed to mean that X should equal Y. So I'll bring that 139 degrees down here, and Y will equal 139 degrees. Start collecting those. All right, different way. Either I can see that these Y and Z are supplementary, or I could see that X and Z are inside of a C. Either one of those will tell you that you should be doing 180 minus 139 to get that Z is 41 degrees. Again, don't forget, cross your Z's for upper level math. That's what you're in, so Z equals 41 degrees. Okay, and then maybe one more time with a Z. And if I go with this Z here that I'm putting in pink, again, I'll outline it again, maybe you can watch. So we're using this guy. There's a Z with the appropriate parts being parallel, which should tell you that this angle Y equals W. So once again, W is going to equal 139 degrees. So W equals 139 degrees. And don't forget, you could have done what you did a lot in the last chapter, being comfortable moving that 41 around in all the different spots and the 139s. Okay, but again, our focus is when the picture is tougher and it doesn't look like that with a bunch of parallel lines, can you come up with the letters, the Z's, the C's, the F's, and so on and so forth, okay, to be able to figure out what is happening. All right, let's see what we see in number 2. Okay, so as we progress through here, don't forget, if I'm just kind of looking at 2 and 4 together, don't forget the things you know. Straight angles, right? You know your Z's, C's, F's, X's. Straight angles add up to 180. Right angles equal 90. You know the 3 angles inside of a triangle equal 180. So don't forget all the things you've learned. Okay, use all of those to your benefit. Okay, all right, so on number 2, I do see a triangle. Right now that triangle involves Y, X, and 52. Okay, so don't highlight this yet. I don't want to complicate the picture, so I'm going to erase that. But notice, X and Y, I can't have 2 things that I don't know. So I want to work to try to get one of those figured out. Okay, so lots of different avenues that we could go here. But I'm thinking maybe we do this. Okay, why don't we try this? I see a Z right there with the appropriate parts being parallel because of the arrows, okay, that were given in the picture. And that's supposed to mean to me that Y and 36 are equal to each other. Great. I will find that and say off to the side, Y equals 36 degrees. Okay, done with Y. Now, if I go back and use the triangle we were just talking about, this is what I'm focusing on now. I now know that X plus 36 plus 52 equals 180, right? So you could solve that. To me, I just add 36 and 52, and I subtract from 180 to get X. That's the same thing you're going to do with this algebraic equation. So add 36 and 52, subtract from 180, and you will get that X equals 92 degrees. I'll go ahead and put that in the picture. Okay, so X equals 92 degrees. Again, notice we don't need to solve these in order, just wherever it comes up. Okay. Next, I need W because that's the last thing that's left. All right, well, I see that W is an angle inside of this upside down weird looking C with the appropriate parts having arrows, so parallel. And therefore, this angle and this angle that I'm marking differently are supposed to be supplementary. So that is basically telling us that W plus over here on the right, you've got inside of this, you've got the 36 and the 92. So you're telling me W plus 36 plus 92 equals 180 because they're supplementary. So again, to me, I'm adding 36 and 92 and subtracting from W. That's the same thing that you would do if you're solving that equation. And that will give you that W equals 52 degrees. Stay in the habit of putting everything in the picture, guys, and then it will help you find other items. So W equals, what did we just say? 52 degrees. Perfect. Okay, and we have found everything there. All right, moving on. We probably won't do all of these, but let's make sure that we get a few of them done. All right, in 4, I do see a right angle because I see this box, so don't write these in yet, but I see that box, and I see parallel lines because of these arrows, and I also see 2 triangles, and I see a big X here, meaning I should have vertical angles. Okay, so those are all the tools that I have kind of in my back pocket for myself. All right, so here we go. First things first, I might look at, let's enclose this right angle, which we know equals 90 degrees. Okay, notice those are the appropriate parts that are parallel, and therefore I know that this angle and this angle are equal. And therefore, that means that Z equals 90 degrees. All right, so maybe you find Z first. Cross that Z, Z equals 90 degrees. Okay, I could use the triangle here on the left-hand side, right? I can use this triangle right here to solve for this angle. And so if I do 42 plus 90 and subtract from 180, I will get that that angle is 48 degrees. Okay, and since these are vertical angles, and vertical angles are always equal, okay, again, if you want me to highlight the X, here's the big X telling you that those 2 angles are equal. Okay, but vertical angles are always equal, and therefore X is also 48 degrees. Okay, so mark that for yourself. And last but not least, maybe we go with this triangle on the right-hand side now, because you have 2 out of 3 of the angles. So if you take 180, you subtract the 90 and the 48 that you see in there, you should get that Y equals, what, 42 degrees? Okay, I'll put the 42 degrees in here. Did you have another way to get that? Of course. Okay, different letter. I didn't use it. I used the triangle, but here's a different letter. Here's a weird looking Z right there that I just put in red. Okay, with the appropriate parts being parallel. And that should have also told you this angle and this angle are alternate interior and therefore equal to one another. Okay. All right, so keep working with those different tools that you have and those shortcuts to try to help you out with that. And let's see over here. Let's definitely look at 5 together. Okay, so on 5, where could we start? Well, I see a triangle that has 75 and 40 in it. I think I'll find the other third angle in there. Okay, so why don't we do that? So focusing on this triangle with the 75 and the 40. If I take 180 minus 75 and 40, I'll get that this angle is 65 degrees. And guys, just run with it. Once you're given a number, use it. If this is 65 degrees, its vertical angle is 65 degrees. Okay, and eventually it might just help you find something. Well, right off the bat, I noticed that 65 and W are a straight angle. So if I take 180 minus 65, I'll get that W is 115 degrees. Might as well start gathering our information. W is 115 degrees. Okay. Well, now I see a Z that could help me solve for the letter Y. I see a backward Z. Do you see it? That would let me solve for Y. So I hope you're seeing that Z. Okay. And therefore this and this would be equal to each other. So Y is 65 degrees. Okay. And now the last challenge is just to find X. And for X, what do I see? I see a couple of things. So let's do old stuff first, maybe. I see that this big purple mark is a straight angle, right? It's a half circle. That means everything that purple mark goes through is supplementary. They add to 180. So I would be saying the 40 plus 65 plus X equals 180. That's an equation that will help you solve for X. Okay, here's a different option, which we will just put in dark blue. If I want to use new stuff, here is an upside down F with the appropriate parts having the arrows and being parallel. And inside of an F, you're supposed to know that these two angles, which I'll just put big dots, are equal to one another. And therefore, X is 75 degrees, whichever way you do that, with the straight angle or with the F, meaning they are corresponding angles and therefore equal. Okay, so X is 75 degrees. All right. We're doing pretty good, so why don't we just go ahead and finish up our 6 and our 8. Okay, maybe a little bit faster here. I'm going to do some vertical angles, put the 60 degrees here. Maybe I will go ahead and do a backwards Z for here. Okay, and therefore this angle and this angle are also equal. So notice I can pick up my 60 degrees just like we did in the last chapter. I can say this is vertical to it, so therefore that's also 60 degrees. Hopefully you're seeing then that these two are supplementary right here, and therefore X would equal 180 minus 60 to be 120 degrees. Okay. X and Y are sitting inside of an F with the appropriate parts being parallel. So X and Y should be equal to each other because they are corresponding, right? This part and this part are equal. So Y would be 120 degrees. Was there a different way to do Y? Of course. I also see here's a C right here. Okay, with the appropriate parts parallel. So you're supposed to know that this angle where the 60 is and this angle where the 120 is are supposed to be supplementary, right? Angles inside of a C are supplementary. Right? Get rid of that so you don't think that I'm saying that they are equal, because they're not, but they are supplementary. And one more time, the z and the y are straight angles. I'm going to go with that. So if you take 180 minus 120, you will get that z is 60 degrees. All right, hopefully we're on a roll. Okay, hopefully we're on a roll together. Let's look at 8, because this type does show up pretty often. When I see a triangle and down here a straight angle, okay, those are my two things that I'm going to be using to my advantage. That's really all I see in the picture is a triangle and a straight angle. Then I'm going to go ahead and use, in this case, a lot of z's. So for instance, if I go with this forward-looking z, I notice I have the appropriate parts parallel to tell me that 45 and x are equal to each other. So go ahead and put that in the picture. So that's 45 degrees. Likewise, if I go ahead and use this backward z, that tells me with the appropriate arrows, so those parts are parallel, that the 30 and the z are equal to each other. So z is 30 degrees. And then you have two options for y. Either you should be recognizing that the three angles inside this triangle add to 180, okay, which you could use. Or if you're trying to stick with straight angle stuff, that's the one I'm going to mark for a moment, you should realize that this entire thing is a straight angle, and therefore 30 plus y plus 45 equals 180. Notice 30 plus y plus 45 equals 180 is the same thing you would get if you were using that triangle to your advantage. Okay, so either way, you should be getting that y equals 105 degrees. 105 degrees. Okay, so we didn't gather our stuff as we were going here, but let's do that now. So we saw that x equaled the 45 degrees. We saw that z equaled 30 degrees. And just so you see it again, what I was coming up with for y, either from the triangle or the straight angle, you would be saying that 30 plus y plus x, but x is, what did we find? 45 degrees plus 45 equals 180. Okay, so that's what I was just doing with you. So if you do 180 minus the 45 and minus the 30, then you will end up with y equaling 105 degrees. And just to drive home that point again, we all know 105 is an obtuse angle, guys. Look at y in the picture. Definitely doesn't look obtuse. Remember, we never trust what a picture looks like. We trust the information that is given to us. Okay, for geometry. That's a big part to remember. Okay. All right, if we go ahead and go to 9, just that last one for a little extra practice. Let's see what we have here. So things that I would be using to help me. When I'm given a number, guys, I really just kind of start with it. So here we go. There's a straight angle. 180 minus 150 will tell me that's 30 degrees. That may or may not help me. Okay, I don't know. I just keep going. At this point, I do happen to see that there is a backward z right here that includes w and the 30 that I just found. There's a backward z with the appropriate parts parallel, and therefore that tells me that this angle of 30 degrees equals w, because those are alternate interior angles inside of a z. So w equals 30 degrees. All right, I'll go ahead and put it in the picture. Next, I might go with this fact that I see a triangle right here that I'm highlighting in orange. And I know 2 out of 3 of the angles. So 30 plus 40 is 70. 180 minus 70 will give me that x is 110 degrees. All right, so if this is 110, then its vertical angle will also be 110 degrees. Okay, let's put a different marking for that one. Well, you have options now, a couple of options. I either see a Z here that includes the 40 and this angle adjacent to, which means next to Y. So if this 40 up here equals this part down here, okay, we'll just use 3 marks. Well, then I can put 40 degrees right there. And now Y and 40 are supplementary once again. Okay, just use a different symbol. So if I do 180 minus 40, I will get that Y is 140 degrees. Okay, of course, we'll put that in our picture. So remember, show work, guys. Either set up your equations if you're still needing to see them. That's perfectly fine. Show pictures. Show your numbers in the picture. You're welcome to, again, use those colored pencils while you're doing your homework, or you can use them on a quiz. Okay, I suggest pencils, something that can still be erased if possible, in case you make a mistake. Okay, but see what you can do with those shortcuts. All right, good luck.